What I'm about to tell you is the opposite of what you've heard for years. There are no planned layoffs at San Diego schools in the foreseeable future. That doesn't mean San Diego Unified is flush with cash, though. The district is facing a $90 million deficit. Joining me to discuss how the district plans to close the budget gap is School Board President John Lee Evans. Before we talk about closing this budget deficit, walk me through some of the cuts that the San Diego Unified School District has endured over the last several years and how that's affected education.
Well, we've cut hundreds of millions of dollars from the budget. One year is 120, another year is 80, and those are just piled on top of each other. One of the biggest things has been in terms of class size increases. We haven't increased as much as some other districts, but we've had to increase our class sizes. And then all of the auxiliary services, librarians are virtually non-existent in the district. We're very limited in terms of counselors and nurses, and in terms of support staff, we have almost none. And so there's so many tasks at the school that can't be handled properly. So it really does have an effect on the total academic program. Our teachers have been struggling and doing the best job that they can, but it's been very difficult.
So going forward, how do you close a $90 million budget gap without layoffs?
Well, we looked at the traditional model of where you lay people off and automatically it saves millions of dollars, but it's just kind of like taking a meat cleaver, sort of like the federal sequestration, without really being thoughtful about it. And what we decided to do this time was do a very focused reduction of staff, but through attrition. So we are looking at reducing our teaching staff by about 300 teachers next year, which is pretty significant. But we have several hundred who leave each year, and we're going to make adjustments so that we don't have to replace the majority of those teachers.
But isn't there a downside to attrition?
Well, no, because it's much more orderly. When we have layoffs, it's strictly on the seniority model. So, for example, last year we had one school with about 26 out of 28 of their teachers were laid off because we just go through the whole seniority thing. Everybody gets moved around. This way, we do it on a very targeted basis. This school has one extra teacher. This school has needs one more teacher, and we move them around very carefully. We adjust the class sizes a little bit, but we don't do it on a massive scale. Because one of the things we have to realize, layoffs are not just layoffs. Layoffs mean we are massively increasing the class sizes.
Now, selling property is also on the table, I understand.
Right.
Is that a short-term solution? I mean, there has been some criticism of that. Is that a short-term solution?
Well, it certainly is a short-term solution, but if there's any year where we really should be making a short-term solution, it is this year, because Proposition 30 has passed. There is more money over the next 7 years that is gradually coming into education, so we're going to be in better times. This first year, we're just trying to achieve stability. And if we can cover the gap with property sales for this 1 year, it'll be well worth it. Our first graders will only be in first grade 1 year. Our seniors will only be seniors 1 year. We're going to really utilize that money to get to a point where we are at a more stable budget situation.
You mentioned Proposition 30. How much does the school district stand to receive from Proposition 30, and is that money a definite?
Well, first of all, we go by the governor's proposed budget, and he has proposed putting $1.6 billion into the schools additional. He's saying over the 7 years he wants to get up to a $16 billion increase, but the first down payment this year is $1.6 billion. If you take San Diego Unified being about 2% of the state budget, that's somewhere around $30 million that would be coming to us from Proposition 30. We had hoped that it would be higher, but it remains to be seen. It still could be increased. With a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature, it's very unlikely that the legislature is going to say, we want to give less money to the schools than the governor is proposing.
There is news out in the Sacramento Bee this morning that the state of California raised $4 billion more than expected in the month of January through increased income taxes. I imagine the district is going to lobby for that money.
Well, certainly, and I think that will affect what the legislature decides in terms of the funding for education. So that certainly is very, very hopeful news, but we have to prepare for what the governor has proposed at this point. It's very likely, we certainly hope that by the final budget adoption in May or June, that it will be higher than that and we won't have to make some of these sacrifices.
Very quickly now, you know, the budget, or the governor made a big deal about keeping a certain amount of reserve and being fiscally disciplined in in California's budget. Where do you stand on that?
We have been a fiscally disciplined district, and we have one of the highest credit ratings of any school district in the state. So we've been able to balance our educational mission and our fiscal responsibility. It hasn't been easy, but we've done it, and we will continue to do that. We have certain reserves. What's interesting is we are required to have reserves, and the state doesn't keep up their own reserves.
John Lee Evans, thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you very much.